It's Dan Gustafson for Wayzata.com. I'm here with Barry Petit. Barry is a candidate running for the Wayzata City Council. Barry, thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate your time.
Great, we'll have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us, tell our viewers, Barry, a little bit about yourself. How long you've been in Wayzata?
Sure.
Your family, what part of town you live in, that kind of thing, if you would.
Gosh, we've been here. I was just thinking about this the other day. I think 42 years now.
Oh, really?
And lived in 3 different places. And what's interesting is the prior 2 places have been torn down and rebuilt with, as every other house in Wayzata seems to be experiencing. So we've got that claim to fame.
Right.
And got wife, Kitty, married again for that same length of time.
Yep.
And then our son is married, and they've got a dog. You've got to have a dog. We needed to get a dog if I want to win this election, I think.
Oh, right. You got to have a dog.
Got to have a dog.
Right.
That's about it. Great place to live. We've it's one of those communities you get attached to, and so I think you get committed to it, you get excited about it, and you want to see things done certain ways. And obviously with my architectural background, I filter everything through design.
Absolutely.
And which is kind of the core of why I'm running. And so it's a great town because I do a lot of work in small towns. I library consulting. I design a lot of libraries in my sort of formal architectural career. And right now, my partner and I are most of our stuff is in smaller towns outstate Minnesota. And you get in these communities, same size as Wayzata, and for them to buy a park bench is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
They've got to get together, have a meeting, probably have 2 or 3 meetings, and then spend the $900.
Right.
In a town like Wayzata, it is just unusual.
It is.
The resources, the money are daunting. So I think that the cool thing about this place with the architectural background that I have is things happen. You really can make things happen because there's building going on, as we can see.
Yeah.
So that's the cool part of it.
Yeah, Barry, can you talk to us a little bit about your educational background?
Yeah, raised in Minneapolis, went to Roosevelt High School, going far enough back, and then University of Minnesota undergrad or Bachelor of Architecture, I think is what it is, and then Cornell University with a master's degree in architecture, and that goes back a long way too. And then worked most of my career downtown. I was a partner with a firm there, a good firm. Really did some phenomenal work. And that's how I got involved in libraries. I did libraries all over the country. Probably about 20 libraries in my career with them. And
you've done some other architecture around town too. You're working on, if I recall correctly, you worked on a shopping center here across the street.
I helped Peter Herford with the village shops.
Yep.
And developed some conceptual ideas for it. We just wanted some sketches on that. And Jim Dayton, who's a great designer, then took those early ideas and refined them, and then did the construction management and the drawings and so forth for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the community sailing center as well.
Helped with that. Those guys. It was a schematic design. It was really meant as a fundraising idea. Because it's nice to have something there to show people this is what we're looking at.
This is what we're going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was I think a big turning point for those guys to go out and find money.
Yep.
And they've hired, and my mission on that was just front end work. So they went out and got a different architect to finish off the project, and it's quite a bit different than it is now. It's a good project, but it's not the same thing we started out with.
Sure, Barry. Tell us, if you would, a little bit about your government experience. You've got quite a bit.
Well, it started way back with the Planning Commission, I guess 86, 87. That'd be right. That's probably about right. And then, did the Planning Commission in 6 years, 5 years, whatever it was.
Yep.
And then City Council.
Yep.
And then did that for 5 or 6 years, and then the 8 years as mayor, but was done with that in 2000. I think the end of 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 15, 20 years of experience, something in that range.
Yeah, that number I think adds up to 19. And
Okay.
then I was still involved with the HRA, which is Housing Redevelopment Authority, which is as much as you need to know about that group.
Yep.
And involved with the Wayzata Foundation and Wayzata Crime Prevention Coalition, so some stuff, but slowly winding down at all of that, I think.
Yeah. Why did you decide to run for city council, Barry?
That is a good question.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to call my wife right now and say, Kitty, why did I decide to do this?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is. Every beautiful morning, I've got this lazy part of the morning where I sit at Starbucks coffee right here in Lake Street, outside on the bench, watch the world go by. And it really is, it's interesting to watch the activity grow. If you're sitting there at 6:30 in the morning, and then suddenly you're there for an hour and a half and talking to people or whatever. But part of that is I have to sit there every morning and I look at Presbyterian Homes, the Bay Center project, which people know of. And there are parts of that it's a big deal. I'm comfortable with what's going on here. I like the activity. I like the density. I get that.
Yep.
But as a design idea, especially the design we see, the facade we see coming down Lake Street, it's just not good. And it really troubles me. And there's been a couple other things. And it occurred to me that you have city councils that have incredible amount of power in defining the character of their communities.
Yeah.
And so, to the point where it's an obligation, I think. And then if you have this opportunity, obligation, responsibility, whatever, and you're unable to talk about it because you have no one on the council that knows anything about design or very little about design. And while it's not meant to be a criticism of the council, it's a left brain, what I call left brain centric council. Left brain is important in decision making and so on and so forth. But you also better have the right brain, the creative side, the person that can see things three-dimensionally, connect the dots, sees the bigger deal. And I think that's what they're missing dramatically. Again, it's like a baseball team without a catcher. It's a hockey team without a goalie. I mean, you got guys, you're missing one person.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's really the analogy.
Well, and you and I have, even in conversations, Barry touched on the Walgreens project, and I don't mean to be critical of anybody that was involved in the decision-making process, but you look at, there's some different architecture going on there, and we've touched on some of that before.
Yeah, I wrote a great letter called "East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet," and it was a function of that because we've got this kind of pagoda sort of thing going on there, and we've got the classic, whether it's Greek or Roman architecture. I'm just fascinated by all the pieces.
There's a lot there,
and the result is it's not a very good building.
Yeah. In your opinion and in your discussion with Wayzata stakeholders, what are the most pressing issues facing Wayzata today?
Yeah, I think it is the development. A lot of stuff happening, but I tell people that's market forces. And market forces are incredibly powerful. And the way the city breaks down, though, is really interesting to me because there is the private side of it, the developer, the guy that owns a piece of land, and again, the market forces attached to that.
Sure.
And then there's your infrastructure side, the stuff the city does.
Yep.
And those are the things the city can choose to do. And I think some of those decisions have puzzled me in terms of is it the cart before the horse kind of thing. And I think there's a lot of people that are concerned about that as well. And while they appreciate all the development going on, I think the mantra is let's get a lot of this done. It's already happening. It's been planned. We've got 3 projects under construction now. We've maybe got a 4th one starting soon. I've counted 8 different projects on Lake Street from the west end to where we're sitting right here. Major projects. And it's sort of like time out. Let's see those first before we make decisions about infrastructure because it will impact it.
Sure.
And so,
and you're talking about the lake effect at this point.
you know, the lake effect, there's really two pieces. There's, you know, the idea of what was they were planning to do with Lake Street, which was going to take out the center lane and make some adjustments and all this thing. That was a city project, and then the lake effect still is the you know, the boardwalk on the water, and then how it connects at both ends. And you know, those are independent projects. I think I know people are a little bit confused by which is which.
Sure.
You know, who's responsible financially and so forth. And the lake effect is moving, you know, on its own pace independently. But I think the infrastructure thing that the city owns, the city makes decisions about. That was my take on that. It was premature based on all this other stuff that's happening right now.
Sure. What is your vision for the future of Wayzata as you look forward, you know, 5, 10, 20 years?
You know, there's got to be a way to... great communities, I've actually wrote a book on this, but great communities, in my opinion, are about design. Great places. I mean, if you think about the places we go, we travel, friend travels, what do you get? You get a postcard of a building. And it's not only a building, you know exactly where they are. Eiffel Tower, I'm in Paris. It's Sydney Opera House, I'm in Sydney. And so architecture defines a place. And people go all over the world to see design. It's incredibly powerful, and it's powerful at every level. It's powerful, you know, Chevrolet, GMC almost went out of business because they had lousy design, and it finally dawned on them they better design better cars. We gave them $75 billion because they couldn't design a car. And that has always fascinated. That has always fascinated me. That example of how powerful it is.
You go eat your breakfast.
And so it's the same is true with communities, because when you talk, people say, "Gosh, I've been to this." Well, classic example. You say, "What'd you do this weekend?" I went to Stillwater. Right away, image comes to your mind. What Stillwater is.
Yeah, you've got the lift bridge. You've got.
No one says I went to Lakeville.
Yeah.
Even if you went to Lakeville, you said, "Well, I went to a friend down, and you know they live down south," or "There's a store I went to," or a hockey game I went to. But if you say Lakeville, there's no image that comes to mind. It is just your classic suburban sprawl. So the power of design is what creates great communities. And I think it's so important that Wayzata get a handle on that. It's going to be an eclectic community, I get that. But we've just got to get a handle on doing better design. We deserve it.
Sure. What do you think about the present direction of development and tourism that's underway? And maybe you could touch on tourism. You've talked a lot on development already.
You know, I think you know, tourism is a I've been fascinated by that idea. I think it's a natural reaction of a place, or it's a natural result of a place being cool.
Yeah.
You know, we've already got 16 restaurants. Everybody knows us for restaurants.
Sure.
So we've got that going. We've got a beautiful lake.
Yep.
You know, we understand that, and that's why people come here. And I think if you can layer on top of that a more, I wouldn't say better design, but more consistent. Because some of the things that are happening randomly are good,
yep,
and some are not. But the idea is, can we get consistently good? That's where we need to be.
What about the forces of the residents? Sometimes I think there's been some commentary from residents feeling overwhelmed by a lot of the tourism and the people that are in town.
And therein lies probably the friction between the lake effect future and what's already here, is bringing more folks. Mm-hmm. And again, if you look at all the projects that are, we haven't even seen the impact of just what's on the boards right now. That's the critical piece of this thing, is what does this town really look like when it's actually done, without promoting, you know, even bringing more people in here.
Right.
And you get the lake walk in, which is, you know, theory could be a great idea, but people are going to naturally come. The word of mouth is pretty powerful. It's more powerful than any marketing you can do. If it's cool, people say you got to go to Wayzata.
Right. You know? Residents in some areas have been calling for more transparency and information on how tax dollars are spent. How would you respond?
You know, one of the things that's complicated, I think, with getting information to the general public is it inherently is. Well, it's why you have a representative government. The theory is with a representative government is the information is so complicated you can't disseminate it to all 4,200 people.
Sure.
So you say, okay, these are the 5 folks that are going to take a look at this and understand this. And so, it's not that they do a bad job at all. It's that I think it's more complicated than people understand, and to then get it out into the public and make sure everyone knows what they know is impossible. It's just virtually impossible. So I think the notion of transparency, I have a different take on that. I think the notion of transparency or some evil agenda, I think is absolutely wrong. I mean, people have always said that. They've always said that.
Wow.
You know, if you're not in the inner loop,
skepticism sometimes.
Yeah. If you're not in the inner loop, there must be something going on.
Right.
But I think, you know, it's an interesting question, the transparency, because what is really critical, I think what's problematic, and what I'd really love to work on, is in our public hearings, it's this kind of monologue. It's this bifurcated monologue, I call it. The public gets up, gets 3 minutes, blah, 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 blah. They talk, thank you very much. Then the council goes on. And the public and council are absolutely isolated from any kind of conversation because of the way it's set up. And I think that's where the frustration is. Because then the debate or the conversation amongst the council people can go down a different trail or misinterpret or whatever it wants to say, and you have no way to interact with these folks. I really believe we've got to find a way to move into a dialogue. And I think then people not only get heard, but they can have a conversation. And I think that's the missing link. It's not easy to fix. No one else does it. Most city councils don't even let people speak they don't have public hearings. That's what happens at the planning commission.
Sure.
And so by the time it comes to the city councils in most communities, you don't speak at all, unless there's some profound information that somebody didn't have before.
Right.
Yeah.
Barry, if you could change one thing about Wayzata and not garner any support, maybe you've got a personal thing that you've got, you know, in mind, but what would you change about Wayzata if you could, if you had the power to do it?
Well, I mean, if you can go back and say, what would I do over? Would that be part of it?
Sure.
You know, I really think, you know, where we're sitting now in the Bay Center project or the Presbyterian Homes, or whatever you want to call it.
We're at the
the landings.
Yeah, we're at the landing at the 925 restaurant.
Exactly. I think what we profoundly missed is the notion of village, of what a project like this should be in a much more comprehensive kind of way. It is just a whole potpourri of different things. And rather than saying, okay, I'm going to have a village where I have a theme, and design differences are nuanced based, rather than just random, I'm different for the sake of difference, number one. Number two, the project basically has a haircut. All the buildings are the same height. I would approve an 8-story building if I could have got 2 stories along the side,
interesting,
along Superior and Lake Street. You kind of crescendo this thing and make it bigger in the back and shorter in the front, and have some variation in height. Secondly, I would have brought Superior Avenue right through the middle of this project, and because then all the retail would have been on both sides. You would have just seen it. The problem is and I feel badly for these guys, there's retail nobody sees.
Yeah.
You got to find it. You don't know it's back here.
And it's interesting to hear you say that, because that's a specific example of how design, the very essence of what you're talking about, Barry, could impact the community positively. So that's it's a very strong argument. And
the issue is forever. You know, you got to understand governments. Most governments are policymakers. Obama healthcare, like it or not, you rip it up with the new regime.
Yeah.
Piece of paper.
Yeah.
We pour concrete.
Yeah.
And it's here forever.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things. Somehow we've got to institutionalize a better process for the stuff that gets built in town.
Yeah. Well, Barry, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
it's been
thank you.
Very enlightening, and I wish you all the success in your campaign, and hope you have a great...
This is the minor campaign. Let me tell you, I got a $20 donation. That's my total budget so far.
Yeah, right. Well, fair enough. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks again.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Good.